It's now mid-June at the trial block, and we're starting to look at our top dressing strategy. First thing we look at is what we think our trials are going to yield. So we're normally chasing sort of the 8 tonne in the cereals and 4 tonne in the canola. So we can easily work out how much N is required to get to this stage. Wheat needs about 40 kilos of N per tonne. Barley's somewhere around 30 to 35, and canola's about 60 to 80 kilos per tonne. So you just do the maths. If we're chasing 8 tonne of wheat, we need 320 kilos of N. Now, it comes from 3 different areas. Some is already in the soil, and hopefully you've done some soil tests to know what that is. At the trial block, it ranges from about 40 units after cereals in the dry summer to 120, 130 units of N following pre-irrigation and faba bean stubble. So it can bounce around from year to year. The other bit of N you've probably put in so far is a bit of starter N. And then you've got the N that's released by the soil during the cropping season. And at the trial block, somewhere around between about 40 and 60 units. So typically we've got about 120, 140 units of N in the system now. And so we're going to have to make up the rest by top dressing. So if you use the wheat example, we need 320, we've probably got 120, 140. So we need to put on about 200 kilos of N per hectare, or a bit over 400, 450 kilos of urea. In terms of when we actually put our urea out, we tend to try and supply the N to the crop as the crop needs it. It doesn't need a lot of N up front. It only encourages a lot of vegetation, potentially excessive tillering. And it's not really till it goes into that stem elongation phase that the crop really needs a lot of N. So hence we tend to target our top dressing for late tillering or late cabbaging in canola, and then maybe top up depending on how much we need to put out at that second node or during stem elongation for canola. Why do the sums? The first thing is that it was highlighted a few years ago at a GRDC update at Moama, where Sam North was asking the audience about how much urea they put on. And most people were in that sort of 100, 150 kilos of urea to the hectare. But they also, in the same survey, said they were probably chasing 6 to 7 tonnes as a target yield. But if you make some assumptions about typically how much nitrogen's in the system plus they had urea, then realistically they were limiting the crop to around that 5 tonne mark. So it's good to know what you've actually got so you can actually supply the crop to meet its demand, so you can actually fulfill its potential. The second was sometimes that there's a lot more N in the soil than you expect, particularly after a fallow or after a pulse crop. So, and I'll illustrate this from last year at the trial block. Spooked by 2018, where we didn't have a lot of opportunity to top dress. I decided to top dress the barley a little bit early, given there was an opportunity. Now, when we got the soil test back, we already had probably close to 200 units of N, and I'd just chucked on another 60. So what we ended up with was a lot of vegetative growth. We had a lot of lodging before we even got to stem elongation. It's sort of recovered, but towards the end of the crop that it just collapsed, and we ended up with a pretty disappointing result, which only highlights that I should have taken notice of my own advice. As for any sort of rule, there's always exceptions, and I'd probably look to top dress earlier if I either had a poor establishment, so I need as much tillering as possible to get the shoot population up, or in a particularly low nitrogen situation like coming out of a rice or something like that. If you want some help with doing nitrogen budgets, talk to your agronomist or contact us here at the ICC and we should be able to help you out.